CEO Live Talks.
I am Dr. Swannie Jett, and I have a passion for public health for over 30 years. Now, I'm in a position to affect change, and these are the critical conversations about health in our community with the people who can help me make those changes. Good afternoon. Welcome to CEO Live Talks. I'm your host, Dr. Swannie Jett, and today I have a good friend coming to the set, Dr. Pollio.
Dr. Jett, great to see you, sir.
Great to see you. Please have a seat. Have a seat. Well, you know, this has been a long time coming.
Absolutely, and I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Yeah, you know, the funny thing is, I have worked with your wife for, man, it seems like 3 years now.
Okay, yep.
With the Kentucky Derby Festival, and you know, it's gonna be kind of sour to see her leave.
I know. She's been there for 13 years.
She was leaving. Such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
So as I customarily do, you know, on the set, I dive a little bit into your background.
Sure.
You know, so, you know, I heard my producer talk about he knew your father. Mm-hmm. So tell me, where did you grow up at?
So my family, my parents are from Louisville. Mm-hmm. My dad was a basketball coach at DuPont Manual High School from 68 to 71. Coached Philip Bond, and shortly after I was born, we moved away, and I didn't come back till after college. My dad became a college basketball coach, and so we moved about every 4 years. He was head coach at Kentucky Wesleyan, and then Virginia Commonwealth. So I went to high school in Richmond, Virginia. Okay. And I wanted to be a college coach just like him. And so when I decided I wasn't quite good enough to play college basketball, I really wanted to, but I was about 5'6", and had a marginal jump shot, which is not a good recipe to play college basketball. So my dad and I decided, let's figure out who I could go learn from and be a student manager. Decided to go to Indiana University and work for Coach Bobby Knight for 4 years up at Indiana University to learn to coach.
How was that?
I will say this, I had no idea at the time that it was preparing me to become superintendent of Jefferson County Public Schools. Right. And so when people say to me, man, you've got a tough job, how do you do it? I said, I spent 4 years with Coach Knight.
Yeah.
I mean, he was as difficult and challenging as you got. I learned amazing leadership skills from Coach Knight, mm-hmm. but I mean, it was extremely intense working for Coach Knight.
Now, I know we didn't get off the subject a little bit, but I'm sure he had a high temperament. Let me put it that way.
I would say that's an understatement. I mean, Coach Knight definitely would have a tough time in today's day and age coaching. Right. I can say that. And just absolute high expectations the highest expectations in everything you did, whether you were a player, a coach, or a manager. Okay. Absolute the highest expectations.
Now, how was that different between him and your father?
They had some similarities. I mean, my dad was an old school basketball coach. There is no doubt about it. I do say, you know, about Coach Knight, you know, in the end, he was a great leader. I learned things, but also, you know, at times I questioned whether, you know, that he was treating all people right. And I felt like my dad did a better job at that. He's my father, but I think he did a better job at that. But I learned a lot from Coach Knight. I really did. But I mean, I grew up with an old school dad basketball coach, and then went and worked for Coach Knight. And so, you know, I know what it's like to have high expectations, and you know, be ready to work. And that's what I do.
How was your dad outside of coaching basketball at home?
My dad was very supportive of me. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, he allowed me to be at practices and go with him to everything, whether it was practices or he would take me to baseball games or things like that. So, you know, a really strong father who supported me. Mm-hmm. No doubt, high expectations, and you know, I credit a lot of my success to those high expectations of my dad. But I'll never forget being as a young boy, being at his basketball practices, watching him coach. Or being on the bus with the team going to games as a young boy. And so I got to see now Pat Kelsey and his son's always on the bench, and it just reminds me a lot of when I was a child.
Well, I'm sure you learned a lot of lessons from your father, but what was the greatest lesson that he taught you?
Well, I think first and foremost, my dad was always said family first. And so, that was a big thing he taught me, was family first. And no matter what your job is, no matter what you do, your family is first. And I think I took that from him. When it comes to work, I think the ethics around hard work. I never knew my dad to miss a day of work ever.
Wow.
And I took that from him. But hard work, treat people right at work, but knowing that you've got to outwork people if you're going to be successful. And I think my dad taught me that. And I've taken what I've learned from that into JCPS, which is, you got to outwork everybody else. Mm-hmm. And as a leader, show everyone else your work ethic, so you set the bar and expectations for everyone else.
Well, I'm scared to ask. When do you shut down at night? Because I know my hours and how I work. So,
I think the toughest thing as a leader is you never really shut down.
Okay.
And so you can go home, and it's the toughest thing to be about your family, because when you are a leader in a high stress, high leverage situation, especially, when we're talking about Jefferson County Public Schools, we've got events going on all the time and information coming in all the time. And so in today's day and age, it might not have been this way 40 years ago, but in today's day and age, you get information all the time.
Real time.
So whether it's a Saturday night, a Sunday afternoon, a Friday night, no matter what it is, you are getting information that you have to make decisions about.
Right.
And so I self-admit I'm not really good at shutting down.
Right.
I don't have hobbies that I would say. I love horse racing, but I've never been one to play golf or hunt or fish or do any of these things that you see a lot of people, especially men, do to step away from work.
Step away.
And so it's one of those jobs that you're on 24/7, and I can be up at 3 in the morning if I need to be to make a decision about whether we go to school or not the next day. And that's very surreal when you're making a decision about 100,000 kids going to school and 17,000 employees going to work.
And I used to hear people complaining, talking about they haven't put out a notice.
Yep. And you're just trying to make the best decision and what's right for kids. You want them in school. They need to be in school. Just for the learning's sake, but also, you're talking about, like, a lot of times kids don't eat if they're not in school.
Right,
but
correct.
You also have to focus on what's best for student safety. And so, self-admittedly, I don't step away from it much. I probably need to be better at that in work, but it's my passion. It's the love. I will say this, that I believe my calling in life was to be superintendent of Jefferson County Public Schools. So I'm going to give it everything I have.
Right. So you talked a lot about your dad, but what lessons did you learn from your mom? And your dad being hard, so your mama had to be a little softer and nurturing.
Yeah. So my mom was a teacher for 40 years.
Okay.
And 20 years in Jefferson County Public Schools. So they relocated back here after I went to college, and my mom taught at Ballard High School for 20 years. And I loved teaching. I loved, teaching leadership. And from my mom, I always knew what an incredible teacher that she was, and really still is. She hasn't taught in probably 15 years, but just an amazing teacher. And I still have people come to me and tell me all the time that I had your mom as a teacher, and they'll tell me the lessons that they learned from her and how great of a teacher she was. But obviously very supportive of me, always been the one that supports me and reaches out to me and tells me she's very proud of me. But in the end, I think I was a really good teacher. And I think anybody who's in education is always still a teacher, whether you're an administrator or not. Right. And I think I got those skills from her as a teacher.
No doubt.
At Park Duval Community Health Centers, we go beyond medicine, breaking barriers to care across Louisville, Taylorsville, and Eminence, Kentucky. From primary care and dental to behavioral health and pharmacy support, we serve thousands, many facing financial hardship. With 7 locations and a bilingual staff, we welcome everyone because PDCHC, your health is our mission. We are Park Duval for everybody, everywhere.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Park Duval. My name is Desmond Pritchard. I'm your Chief HR Officer here at Park Duval. I'm located normally 9 times out of 10 at the Wilson location. I'm beyond honored to support our community, to work with our community. There's a lot ahead of us. We have a lot we're ready to do, we're willing to do, and we can't wait to have you on board, to have you doing it with us.
What you show up in is not what matters, it's how you show up.
Right.
So if you can articulate from your heart, they'll forget what you got on.
Because a lot of people want to Google
Yes.
medicine now,
Yes,
and it's very difficult.
it is. Would you Google if you had some sort of ailment that you were curious about?
I'm an epidemiologist by training,
Okay,
so
fair, so you know.
Folks, what are your credentials? And sometimes you have to pull them out and say, okay, here's this degree, here's that. You're like, oh, okay, maybe we should listen to you.
We're gonna build a $40 million facility that allows parents to sleep better at night.
You know, I was watching this thing on PTSD, and they were talking about people in war, and they were like, you know, human beings are not wired to perennially be on alert, you know, in a state of alert.
Right, that's your
and that's what happens
cortisol.
when you're at war.
Yeah, your cortisol level continues to go up, the adrenaline gland.
And that's what's happening to black people.
How did you make the transition? Because I'm assuming you want to be a coach. You're being tuteled by Bobby Knight, the great Bobby Knight.
Yeah.
And now you say, I want to go teach.
Yeah.
How did you make that transition?
So I'll say this is an important lesson for anyone out there. I became an assistant coach outside of Indiana University. I went to Eastern Kentucky University as an assistant coach. And after 4 years there, I was 26 years old. The head coach got fired, and I got fired too. We just weren't successful enough. It's a part of the game. And at the time, I was very distraught about it, but I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot from, you know, what that means. And so as I was thinking about what I wanted to do after I lost that job at Eastern Kentucky University, I was 26 years old, I just decided I wanted my own team. I didn't want to be an assistant coach. I didn't want to go recruit. And so my family had relocated back to Louisville, and I looked for a job here in Louisville, a high school coaching job. Okay. And obviously teaching comes with that,
right.
You know, and Swannie High School was open. It was August of 1997. They had won 3 games the year before. I don't know if anyone else applied for the job, but I said, I'm going to go do it. And in 1997, took the head coaching job at Swannie High School, and I was a teacher as well. Didn't know what I was doing teaching-wise. Got in there and really loved it. Loved teaching kids, but I had some great young men at Swannie High School. We had just an incredible, about 9 players on the team, but I loved every single minute of that. And so for the next 3 or 4 years, I coached basketball, but I got to my late 20s, early 30s, and was deciding what I wanted to do with my life. Do I want to coach high school basketball the rest of my life? And like many leaders do, a mentor of mine tapped me on the shoulder and said, you know what, you would be a really good principal. And so I looked into what it would take to do that and went back to school and got this passion. And it really combined what I think were my leadership skills. I'm blessed with strong leadership skills, I believe, along with a passion for teaching. Yeah. Because being a principal is teaching teachers and setting a culture at the school. And I found I loved that and did that for the next 13 years once I got into administration.
So the funny thing is, I like teaching, just not at that level, at the collegiate level, but I like coaching. So while you were coaching the basketball team, I was a coach on the football team with Kenny Walker.
Is that right? At Swannie High School. What year was that?
98. I was there 99 to 2001.
Okay, so we barely missed each other, I think.
But I got to Louisville in 95, so I was working in the Shawnee neighborhood then. So Kenny Walker was defense coordinator, and I was offensive coordinator.
That is awesome.
And then I coached track with Dennis Trammell, which started a little bit. That probably was 97.
Yeah, I was right there.
So
we crossed paths.
So I remember the basketball team, and of course you remember the football team.
Yeah. We have a young man who's an assistant principal, Demetrius Forney, who is at Moore High School right now and played on the 97-98 football team. Yeah. Great young man. I still say kid. He's probably 40 now, but he's a great young man.
Well, it's amazing because now I see some of the youth from then.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, wow, that means I've been in Louisville for some time.
I know.
So, you know, you go back and you become a principal, you go back to school, and I know you have to do certification, so a lot of people don't realize you have to do a certification in administration.
Correct.
In order to get the principalship. But a person taps you and say, I want to be a principal. You should be, but now you sit in the seat. So day one, how does that feel? Because people throwing stuff at you, it's a rush. It's like being a CEO.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you say, I want to be a CEO,
Yep.
and then you walk in and sit in the seat, be like, uh-oh.
I say it's a lot like being an assistant basketball coach or an assistant coach. You can always look to the coach next to you and say, the head coach, I wish they would do that better.
Right.
Once you're the head coach, there's no one else to look to but yourself in the mirror.
Right.
And so, you know, my dad taught me this. When I first got the call that said, we're offering you the principal at Jefferson Town High School, and then you realize that 1,200 kids are under your care and 120 adults are under your care every single day, and lives are on the line, whether that be safety or whether that be the future, you know, trajectory of the lives of children. And my dad taught me, don't listen to the voice inside your head that says you can't do this, or the doubt inside of your head. And so the first initial reaction in any large leadership role is that self-doubt of, am I made to do this? Can I do this? And so once you talk back to yourself in the mirror and say, yeah, you've been trained to do this. You have the skills to do this. Your whole life has led you to this professionally. Then you just step up and do the work. And I think it requires a bit of humility and humbleness, where you say, I'm not an expert on everything. I'm going to go listen to people inside the organization and learn. One of the best things I did about 2 years into my first principal job at Jefferson Town High School, I went back to get my doctorate. And so people ask me, you got your doctorate while you were a principal of a large high school? But I learned more through that process about what being a good leader is, and about research and trusting research and education, and not just making decisions based on your gut, but following research.
Right.
It was probably, you know, so that humility of being willing to continuously learn, no matter how long you've been in a job, and say, I'm not an expert at it just because I've been doing this for X amount of years.
Right.
It is, I have to continuously learn and get better, and be willing to say, I'm not an expert on everything, and I got to surround myself with great people. One of the things I've been fortunate about in my whole career is I've been very lucky that I've had great people around me.
Right.
And so I tell people all the time, my job as a leader is to surround myself with great people, and then give them the tools and skills they need to do the job. So sometimes that's motivation. Sometimes that's, I'm here to listen to you. Sometimes I need to give you other tools to help you be successful. Sometimes I need to challenge you and say, you got to do a better job at this. But, you know, that's my job, and I've been very lucky that way in my career.
You know, it's interesting. I'm going to take you back. So I had a kid that was at Swannie. I coached track. He went to J-Town, named Joe Thomas.
Oh, really?
That was a kid I coached. He went to, I think his grandmother lived out in J-Town. Used the same track schedule that I gave him at Swannie.
That's
and
great.
He won state champion in 2 and 4, 2 years
wow.
back to back.
That's
at J-Town.
that is fantastic.
Why he was there.
You never know, you really never know how what you do could impact a child's life. That's what I tell educators. So you connecting with that kid and telling him this is what you need to keep doing.
Yep.
That kid you may not have known it at the time, that kid may not have known it, but he won state championships because of that. And no telling how that changed his life.
It definitely changed his life. Well, I talked to the coaches afterward, because I would go out to J-Town. I lived, by the way, even though I was coaching at Swannie, I lived across the street from J-Town.
Oh,
on
okay.
McLean Court.
Yeah, gotcha, right there.
Buses pull in the depot.
Yeah.
So I would talk to the coaches, and they said, we didn't change his schedule. Whatever schedule you gave him.
That's amazing.
And I ran track in high school, college, so I knew I loved this schedule. Yeah. But fast forward, you know, it's interesting when you sit in the seat as a leader. I always wanted the wisdom of Solomon and the patience of Job, and because I wanted to be an innovator, so you got to do the research. Mm-hmm. You need to go back, and every few years I would go to a leadership institute, just to hone my skills. And sitting in the seat, you have to be able to listen.
Yep.
In order to make decisions. Was there ever in a time, I'm sure it was a time that you didn't listen, right? You knew it was a decision to be made, but you got counsel and you didn't listen to it, you went a different direction and it didn't turn out well.
Yeah, oh, well, I've made plenty of mistakes in my life, you know. I say that no matter what, whoever the greatest home run hitter of all time strikes out a whole lot of times as well. I mean, there is no doubt the one that I did that if I could go back and do over again was our transportation debacle we had on the first day of school a couple years back. And I was getting warning signs from bus drivers that this isn't going to work.
Okay.
For about 2 to 3 weeks before. But, and I look back and I don't know how I could have changed it significantly at that time, but I was listening and I was hearing from bus drivers, from the union of the bus drivers, that this is going to be a bad first day. And, you know, I went ahead and was stubborn and plowed through and said, we're going to make this, and ended up exactly what the bus drivers were saying to me was correct. So we ended up having a really terrible first day. I had to make a tough decision that night at about 3 in the morning.
Good grief.
Are we going to go to school on the second day of school and repeat this?
Right.
And I said, well, I've made one mistake. I'm not going to amplify it. So we postponed school for about a week. And the first thing I did that next morning, when we started on a Friday morning of how are we going to fix this, I asked the bus drivers union, could you get me a dozen bus drivers together? And I just sat at the table with them and listened to them for 2 hours and said, tell me what I need to know. And as a result of that, because my team was really struggling, how are we going to fix this? I went back to the whiteboard in front of my team that afternoon and put on the board, okay, here's what the bus drivers told me the problems are. And we listed about 15 problems. And I said, okay, let's all attack each one of these. And okay, you're in charge of this one, you're in charge, and let's put a team together. And with just one by one, we knocked them out. And if I had just listened to the bus drivers 2 weeks earlier and probably said, okay, let's attack that 2 weeks earlier. And even if I had said we're going to postpone the start of school 3 or 4 days to fix it, we wouldn't have had that really bad first day. So no matter who it is as a leader, I discounted what they were saying as though they're just complaining. They don't like the change. They don't like the changes, as opposed to, well, they might be really telling me something I need to hear.
My name is JT Douglas, and I am the Director of Development and Marketing here at Park Duval. I'm in charge of all of the fundraising efforts to help us do some of the great work we do here at Park Duval. The people that come to Park Duval, they're here for a reason. They're here to see us. They're coming to the health center because they don't feel good. And I think it's great work that our physicians and providers do for those patients by helping them.
At Park Duval Community Health Centers, we believe healthcare is for everybody, everywhere. Our 7 locations across Kentucky provide affordable, high-quality care no matter your income. We are Park Duval.
You know, the interesting thing is, so I talked to Rob Newton, smoked cigars with him a lot, and I know he's in the transportation department, over transportation, but really didn't think anything about it. My son, Tyson Harbin,
oh yeah, yeah,
he's in the school system, works for Dr. John Marshall, and he's like, hey, I'm at the depot. It's 10 o'clock at night. Yeah. I'm like, son, that's not your role. What are you doing? Then I knew it was a problem. But the other part is, you know, with Park Duval, we have several different sites. And so prior to, my kids go to Franklin Elementary in Indiana. So I didn't have any kids in the bus, but all my employees, they was like, hey, we had to stagger our times to come to work to 10 o'clock. Yeah. And I'm like, huh? What do you mean? My clinic opens at 8 o'clock. Yeah, yeah. They said, I don't have grandmother or sister to take kids to the bus station. I was like, okay. So they shifted. Are y'all getting out early, or you gonna be late, or what is it? And then I started to hear, hey, we didn't do any kind of test runs like months prior to. So when you say you put somebody in charge, what was the biggest lapse?
Well, I mean, I think it was and I will say this, it was a perfect storm of problems that occurred. Timeline, I will say this, we were trying to change too much at the same time, from student assignment to buses to all of these things that were to start times. Some of it was necessary because we had gone from 1,000 bus drivers to 500 bus drivers from 15 years before, and we were providing the same services. Anyone who knows logistics, if you cut your workforce in half, you're not going to be able to provide the same services. Right. So we were doing that, and then it was, on top of those things, the timeline was too crunched. Okay. And so if I had it to do over again, I would have probably phased it in and done another year before we phased in the new start times, right. To have enough time to begin. But I was trying to push hard to solve a problem while not listening at the same time. And so, it's something you learn as a leader that, first of all, I think being methodical in your approach to change is important. We all want change and we want it quickly, but doing it right is more important than doing it fast. Yeah, I know that Coach Knight, would always say you need to be quick, but don't hurry. Right. And so, I think hurrying is something and that's probably what I did incorrectly. Yeah. So if I had to do over again, I would have listened and probably been more methodical in my approach to change.
One of the things that I've learned along the way is, first of all, people don't like change. That's correct. So, you could try to push through it, but it's one thing to make change, and I try to make it incremental. Anytime I pass a new policy or develop a new policy, I'm going to ask several people. Yep. Before I get hit upside my head and be like, how do you feel about this? Yep. And then before you know it, I've moved your shoes a little bit closer to the corner. Yeah. And you don't know. That's a great point. That's a great way to say it. That's a great analogy. Because everybody said move the cheese. Now, cheese is old. Yeah. Let me move the shoes. I like that. I'm going to start using move the shoes. Move the shoes. Your body going to follow you eventually. You're going to gravitate towards That's great. Shoes. So it's, it was a great call to pause. Yeah. And you have to take ownership of that. I could have easily tried to put it on someone else and say, but you as a leader, this is the thing I believe is that you have to. And there is a book called Extreme Ownership that I think is an important book that the leader, whether they want to put it on someone else or not, you have to take extreme ownership of problems. You have to own it. Because it's you. That is being a leader. Right. You are responsible for whatever happens in the organization.